Hey everyone, it's Michelle Clark. I have a lot on my heart right now that I wanted to share with you all. It's amazing the recent turn of events, and don't believe it for a minute. God is so on the throne. He is so in control, and all of this is just smoke and mirrors. As we know, there's been a whole lot of lies going on, and don't take part in believing any of it because there's so much else that he's saying right now, and we haven't seen the end of it yet. Last night, actually, he had downloaded a whole lot for me. It was a lot that I was going to put on video anyway, and then this happened, and like, okay, this is definitely time, so I wanted to go ahead and do that for you. So the first thing that I heard him say, I was literally just resting my head on the pillow about to go to bed when I heard him say this. He said, the election results, and then he said, will be released, and then he said, in December, and then Donald Trump. So I know election results have been called, but that's not the final say. The final election results will be released in December, and they will be for Donald Trump. Then I also heard these words, the government, and I heard illegal contraband. So that was it that I heard at first, and then I went to bed. And then later on in the middle of the night, I woke up and got a glass of water, went back to sleep, and he had a lot more to say. So it continues from there. The next thing he said was, and the Senate and the House. So going back to the winning of these elections, not only will Donald Trump win the final elections, but we'll also win the Senate and the House. And then sometimes God will say something in a different language, and that'll point to something for me as well. And then I heard him say, Ni hao ma, which means how are you in Chinese. My parents used to live in Beijing, and I've spent quite a bit of time there, so I recognized that pretty quickly. So with regarding the illegal contraband, I knew that was pointing to China. From there, I heard the devil is at stake. And there are a couple of different meanings with that one. First, I went ahead and I looked up what at stake literally means. And what I got from that was, that the devil is in a perilous position. Now, again, when I say these things, I'm talking about the principalities, the things that we're all contending against, forces of good and evil. Whether you understand the Bible yet or not, there's just so much in there as far as we don't wrestle against man in our lives. It's not against flesh and blood as the Bible puts it, but it's the evil forces that men are influenced by. So that's why I'm speaking in those terms. So the forces behind the things that are happening right now are ruled by the things of darkness. And so all of that then is in a perilous position. And then, but going back to the word at stake, the word stake was really sticking out for me, specifically as a stake, as in driving a stake, like a metal peg, a metal stake. And I was brought to the story in actually the book of Judges about Jael, how Jael, a woman, she actually drove a stake into the head of Sisera, who was a military leader leading armies that were attacking Israel. And so it's interesting, it was done by a woman, and she drove a stake in his head to end the attack. And so to hear the devil is at stake, guess what? He's gonna get a big stake in his head. Just as far as all the agendas, all the plans of that are not in line with God's plans, they're gonna get a big stake to the head. And I heard this morning also, hit the nail on the head. That falls in line with that too. So it's interesting also when I looked up the story of Jael and found out that it is in the book of Judges. Then Amy Coney Barrett's name came up because she, of course, is a judge. And she has an influence in things. And as I understand it, she even has a background of dealing with votes, specifically with regarding the situation in Florida for George W. Bush's vote. She was a part of that. So it'll be interesting to see where she comes into play there. But in another way related to that, when I was typing all these notes down on my phone as they were happening, so I didn't forget any of them. So I'm just glancing at them now as I speak. But when I wrote down the word metal stake, when I wrote down the word metal, I made a typo, and the autocorrect on my phone replaced it with the word natal, Natal, speaking of course, with regard to babies. And so that immediately pointed out abortion. And what I got from there is that the devil's plans will be aborted, and that there truly is a spirit of abortion, not just regard to the babies in the womb, but there is a spirit of abortion that is trying to abort the presidency of Donald Trump. And by this being dismantled, by the enemy's agenda being aborted, it will destroy that spirit of abortion that is over our nation. It will make way for Donald Trump to become president as he is intended to be. And it'll also deal with that spirit in other areas of our nation, which will provide the overturning of Roe versus Wade. So these things actually have to happen in order for the other things to also come into play. And also with all that, because Jael's in the book of Judges, and I looked it up, it also deals in the same story with Deborah, who was a judge at the time. So here we are with another female judge, but it really spoke to the spirit of Deborah. And Deborah, not only was she a judge, she was a warrior. And so it really speaks to a warrior spirit, that women will be rising up and being noticed and taking things forward and being used in this time. So speaking out to all the women out there, be strong and courageous, step up and trust God, and you've got a voice. Speak it out. He's put a voice in you, and the enemy does not want you to speak that out. He wants you to hide and keep quiet and keep silent, but you have a voice that's to be heard. You have a message in your heart that's to be spoken, and as you do that, it will contend against that spirit of abortion that is in our land and will bring life, because God has placed life in the woman. He has given us life, to speak life into our nation, into our surroundings, into our families, into our world. So know that you are here positioned to extend life and use it, okay? So with all this, going to the next step too, with this whole statement of the devil is at stake, along with that, then I also got that God is the stakeholder. So even though we have this picture of Jael driving a stake in Sisera's head in the book of Judges, ultimately the one who truly holds the stake is God himself. And he's the one who is dealing with this. He is the one who's dismantling everything. He is the one who is bringing this down. Quite honestly, this house of cards down. And that's the interesting thing. When I looked up the definition, okay, Lord, what exactly is a stakeholder? And there are a couple definitions here that I would like to read to you. So the first one is someone who has invested money into something or who has some important connection with it and therefore is affected by its success or failure. So someone who has an invested interest in a situation and will be affected by its success or failure. That's a stakeholder. Also, with regard to law, someone, usually a lawyer, who takes charge of property during a quarrel. All right, we've got a quarrel going on, and the nation of the United States of America is God's property. It belongs to him. It does not belong to anyone else ultimately but him, and he is the one who will make sure that it is appointed to where it needs to be appointed and to whose care. The term stakeholder also means someone chosen to hold money that is risked by people on a race or competition in order to give all of it to a winner. So now let's look at it this way. Let's take the word money and let's use the word votes there, and let me reread that. Someone chosen to hold the votes that are risked by the people on a race or competition in order to give all of it to the winner. So he's going to ensure that the winner gets what is due to him, that whatever has been invested into this situation will be applied and directed to where exactly it needs to be. He is a stakeholder. This last term actually does also point to a gambling term, and that's where I got highlighted with the term House of Cards. Now, actually, quite some time ago, in a couple of years ago, as I was doing some prayer assignments in Washington, D.C., a friend of mine who I was partnering with there, we were praying in front of the White House. And this was back in, I believe, 2015 or so. Might have been 2016. I don't remember the exact date right now. But we stood in front of the White House and we prayed for godly marriages. We prayed for just godly unity in families, because really the family unit is what depicts our society, because everybody is born from a family, and the condition of their family will determine the condition of how they function in their own lives, if they become leaders, how they lead, the perspectives that who they align themselves with, as far as, are you aligning yourself with God, or are you aligning yourselves with the things of this world, all those kind of things. So family and marriage is extremely, extremely important for it to be aligned with God. And just months after we did that, the White House got lit up in rainbows, and because of the ruling for gay marriages. And that broke my heart, because I'm like, Lord, what happened? I mean, I know we prayed, and what happened? And he said, even a house of cards must first be built in order for it to come down. Even a house of cards must first be built in order for it to come down. And so God will actually let things happen, because it's part of the strategy. It's part of the process. He has to let these things come into their fulfillment so that he can take them down. And with one breath of his, he will wipe it all out. And he gets the glory. Everything is brought to the surface. Everything has become known. The truth has become known. If the house of cards doesn't ever get to be built up, then nobody will ever know, and it'll be fester and hidden underneath the surface and be able to have its way. But by letting things happen and come to the full fruition, then God can tear it down, and all the world who is watching will know without a shadow of doubt that it was him and what the real truth is. And so that's what's happening right now. He's letting these votes be counted the way that they are being counted. He's letting the manipulation happen. He's letting the election being called. He's letting all these happen because that house of cards needs to be built. And then once it's built, guess what? It's going to come down, and the truth will be made known. And this is the way it happens. So don't you fret, because it's coming. We're not done yet. It's coming. All right. And with that, I also heard him say Rock of Ages, because he is the Rock of Ages. And it points there too, also to the story in the book of Matthew about the foolish man building a house on sand and the wise man building his house on a rock. And when the storm came, the house that was built on the sand completely fell down and got washed out. But the house that's built on a rock would stand. And our house is built on the rock, which is our Lord Jesus Christ. And he is immovable. He is unshakable. He is not going anywhere, even though the plans of the enemy, the lies, the deceits, the manipulations, those are all built on sand. They have no foundation whatsoever to them. And with one breath of God, with one blow, with one wind, it's all coming down. And it's actually pretty funny. God gets pretty comical sometimes. He uses songs a lot of times to speak to me. There'll be a song that starts bubbling up, a song that I wouldn't have heard in ages, and I'll listen to the words and I know exactly what he's saying. And this morning when I woke up, I heard the song by Jefferson Starship, I think is who sings it. We built this city on rock and roll. And it was just such a testament of, we built this city. We built this Washington, D.C., because I live right outside of Washington, D.C. We built the city on a rock. This city is built on a rock. Do not fret. Do not fret at all. God has set a foundation in the city. Even more recently, he has done amazing things on the mall, establishing a new covenant, and I can explain more about that later. There's also in my post that I've posted on my page. But he has established a rock for us to stand on, and his plans are not going anywhere. He is shutting doors that cannot be opened, and he is opening doors that cannot be shut. He is in control. He is taking care of it all, and we are in good hands. And that's the thing too with all this. There was just such an assurance in all this as he was speaking last night. Such a total assurance of his safety that he's got this, that we are safe, that everything is right on target, just as planned, A-OK. And one of the final words I heard just before he wrapped up and I went back to sleep, the bottom line is reelected. That's one of the final words he said, reelected. All comes down to this. Donald Trump will be reelected. No question, no ifs, ands, or buts, no doubts. He will be reelected. God has ordained it. It will happen. So no matter what we see with our eyes right now, what we witness, it's all part of the process. It's all part of that house of cards that I mentioned, and it's not going to stand.